Hey guys!
It's Remee
And Shyla.
and welcome back to Inspired at UVic, a podcast for the students by the students.
Which is hosted by Inspire, STEM for Social Impact.
Today joining us is Valeriya Savchenko.
Also known as Val.
Hey guys, thanks for having me on here.
Val's currently working on a super special project at Inspire. Would you like to tell us a little bit about what you're doing currently?
Yeah, totally. So I started at Inspire in September on a project called Bridging Roots, and it's me and a team of three people, so four of us in total, working on a project to create an application for and with students in Tuktoyaktuk in the Northwest Territories. They are a part of a remote Indigenous community, and they are facing some climate change crisis, which is threatening to swallow up Tuktoyaktuk. And so we are hoping to preserve a lot of their traditional knowledge and culture and also their language in Uvalaktan in an application. And so hopefully they could also be used in the school, because as we got to know the students more, the students that we worked with, we learned that a lot of them don't actually have the language in Uvalaktan and can only learn it on the days that elders come and teach it. And so we're hoping to have like a language component in the application that could help preserve the language, because there's only a couple families that really still know it. Yeah, and so that was the first 4 months of the project, just kind of exploring it, and then we're back for round 2 this semester in the summertime with a crew of 3, 1 new face and 2 old faces. And yeah, we're continuing the project, and we're actually looking to visit Tuktoyaktuk for a week at the end of May. Talk to more community members, not just the students, but also like parents, teachers, elders, and whoever wants to help us.
That's awesome, Val. Well, we are glad that you were able to join us today. Remee, would you want to talk a little bit about your project?
Yeah, so along with Val and Shyla, we were all part of the cohort of the fall semester of the Inspire projects. And my Inspire project was called Rainwise. It was a water security project that came to us from a group of students at Shawnigan Lake School who won the Westmont Design Prize in 2022. With this project, we began by looking at schools to do it with, which was the original suggestion from the students at Shawnigan Lake School. And we actually decided that maybe a community that had more trouble with water security was independent farmers in smaller communities around Vancouver Island. So we ended up going to Salt Spring Island, which was an amazing experience for me and Javier, my partner. We got to go and visit Salt Spring Island every 2 weeks and really get to know the people that we were working with, and really had a big focus on community engaged learning with our community partners. And it was the first time both my partner and I had gotten the opportunity to do an individual engineering project at such a large scale and create a rainwater harvesting system for a community in need on Salt Spring Island. And one of the really cool things about my Inspire experience was that we got to do it all together. So there was a cohort of 10 of us that all got to have this experience together, all with different projects, like Val's Bridging Roots and Shyla's Fire Force. Would you like to tell us a little bit about Fire Force?
The project I was on, Fire Force, was partnered with the Capital Regional District, and we were working with them to help protect and detect any fire and trespassing around the Souk Lake Water Reservoir, which is actually the main drinking water source for the Greater Victoria region. So this project was a little bit different than both Remee and Val's, as we were working with a fully established kind of governing organization. So there were a lot of uphill battles with that, but it also made it a really cool and impactful project.
The organization Inspire at UVic works with students and community groups to engage students in community-based learning and ways of learning outside of the classroom that can be super impactful. So each group was given a project to work on, and they were really encouraged to take ownership over the projects. And it was a super impactful experience for all of us.
And I think it's a privilege to be able to experience something like this early on into our careers. I feel like it's very developmental of all of these technical and non-technical skills, since it's very hands-on.
Yeah, and Inspire gave us the opportunity to do both software, which Shyla and Val are more aimed towards in engineering, and there was also a civil project. So that was a really cool diversity within the group that we got to experience.
I think another really cool aspect of it is that this was completely unsupervised. Like, we had free range of what we do and how we do it. 'Cause our teams were self-managed, and I think that helped a lot of us with our imposter syndrome, just because it's like you have to make it happen in 4 months, and so you put in your best efforts to make it happen, and it does happen, and you're like, wow, I can do this. I can be an engineer. So I like that.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's very empowering, as I've said before. And for me personally, I wasn't a civil engineer going into the civil engineering project. And I was really able to succeed with the tools that Inspire helped us learn through workshops that they put on as well.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's a good point, that it was a self-managed project, but you weren't completely on your own in that team. You still had all of these resources, other mentors that were available to you, which I think really wrapped up.
Yeah, the mentors were such a cool tool for us to have access to. People that work at Google and people that work at local companies were really helpful and super inspiring to work with and get to be involved in our project, and they were always so excited to help.
Yeah, and they were like really eager to help us with our projects, and a lot of them were remote, but the ones that weren't, like across the country, they came down to our conferences, and it was really nice just meeting them in person for the first time.
Yeah, I think that with the mentors, one of the biggest things that I learned from Inspire is if you ask anybody in the engineering community for help, they're not going to laugh at you in the face. They're usually very happy to help and really interested in what's going on in the next generation of engineers. And that's a really cool experience that I wouldn't have gotten if I wasn't working with Inspire. With our mentors, they also helped us a lot with working through the idea process. Val, what did you find with like the idea process of getting this engineering concept and just having to roll with it?
Yeah, so the idea that we started off with, it was given to us by a group of students from St. Margaret's School who won the Westmont competition. And they pitched it to us, and we took it on. And at the end, we did something completely different. And this in itself was the first lesson we actually learned at Inspire in the very first day, when the alumni were speaking to us. But we didn't understand what that really meant. We're like, what do you mean don't like marry the idea that you're given? This is the idea. We're supposed to complete it. But as we took on our project, like the original idea was meant to do the same kind of application, but for Vancouver Island and the Indigenous communities there. But as we even just began to dissect the problem, we realized that in order to collect any information from Indigenous communities and like design the application, we need to actually talk to them and see what they would like to add, because none of us were Indigenous ourselves. And that led us to have our very first pivot, because we were like, okay, well, we can't do the whole island in 4 months, because one, we need to make a connection with this, like even just one Indigenous community. So we reached out to the Songhees, and we didn't really hear back from them, which kind of sucked, but so we decided to move on and look for different partners. Luckily, we found the group of students in Tuktoyaktuk, because the program director, Daniela Damien from Inspire, went up there to give a lecture at the Magna School and connected us to these students. And that's where our whole entire project idea pivoted, which was a shock to us initially, because we were like, should we move to talk and do the project there, but they're remote. How would we connect on a daily, not a daily, but a weekly basis, regularly, and co-design with them? It was really intimidating to us, but we went with it, and the scope change and the pivot, it actually ended up being beneficial for us, because if we stuck to the original idea, we wouldn't have completed anything. So yeah, don't marry the idea. Definitely dissect it and look at all the pros and cons and whether you can even do it.
Yeah, I think that's like definitely a big thing that was a theme for both of our projects was that you really have to explore the root cause of the idea or like the root of the idea and be okay with choosing big themes that you want to go with and then building from there, because otherwise you might get stuck. And when you start a project, you're not necessarily super educated on the topic that you're going to be facing. So once you have that time to delve in deep, like it's super educating, and you have to respect that period of time and then be able to adjust from that. So that's definitely a tool that I've learned a lot from Inspire.
Mm-hmm. And if you come up with all these different ideas for solutions, don't throw them away, keep them. And then just when you discover what your problem is that you're trying to really solve, then you can look at the solutions.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point when it comes to pivoting, just kind of being mindful of everything. But you also kind of have to consider, if you do have clients, their perspective as well, which I think is something that my team, Fire Force, struggled with and near the beginning, being able to manage those expectations with the CRD themselves as well.
So with Val and yours, Shyla, you were both able to work with really cool community partners and really learn how to work as a team to then make these big relationships. And that's, I think, one of the big things about your project, Val, was the relationships that you make. Could you comment on a little bit about how Inspire helps foster those networking events and relationship building?
Yeah, our project, the big theme for our project was actually relationship building, because when we picked up the project, like you mentioned, Remy, we get these awesome mentors, and one of our project mentors was Tara Rush from Google Waterloo, and she herself is also Indigenous, so she was really excited to help us on the project. And we were so worried, and from the very beginning, we're not Indigenous. We can't really insert ourselves into this project. How can we go about doing this? And the very first piece of advice she offered was, you have to build relationships, and before you can do these projects, because you're trying to get to know the people. Yeah, and so Tara Rush actually told us about this book, I Spent a Year Drinking Tea, and that just talks about how relationship building is really important when you're doing projects with Indigenous communities, and that kind of calmed us in a way, because if we create these relationships, we get to know the people more, we get to hear their honest opinions, and we don't we're more comfortable with the project in general, us not being Indigenous. Yeah, and so we actually did just that. We spent some time just getting to know the students that we worked with. We FaceTimed them twice a week, and for the first bit, we just got to know them, and we had each other on social media, and just, yeah, they talked about their lives, we talked about ours, and then we started designing, but this kind of relationship building was a heavy theme. But honestly, not even just with us as the team and also the students in Tuck, it's also amongst ourselves in the team, because we were all strangers to each other when we started. So the first bit we just spent getting to know each other, which helped create psychological safety in our working environment, which allowed us to trust each other and share ideas and not feel oh my God, this is stupid, I can't share this, I'm going to get shut down. We were able to share our big ideas, and that helped our project go much smoother too. Yeah.
I think on another note, since Inspire is actually providing us with these real world organizations, for me, the CRD was a local organization. So this meant that our team was actually able to visit the Souk Lake Water Reservoir ourselves in person and get a full guided tour. It was super cool actually being able to see the watershed in person. And I think this fact made the project more real for me and our team. And we kind of could see the project moving forward. It wasn't just this classroom project with a blank kind of face to it. We actually saw the purpose, saw the need for our project, which was really inspiring.
Yeah, definitely. And for me also, we got a really cool experience of choosing our own community partner and kind of exploring what a relationship would look like with a couple different groups. And in the end, we ended up going to Salt Spring Island and being trusted by the Salt Spring Island Farmlands Trust to create a water system for them. And I remember the first time we went up there, it was actually just me because my partner got sick, and I was shaking in my boots. It was my first real world engineering experience, but it was one of like the most confirming things that I was like in the right place at the right time, to feel like these people were actually looking at me like a real engineer and putting that trust and faith in me that I knew what I was talking about, even if I was nervous and kind of thinking on my feet because I had never put all of my training into work before. But it was a really cool, like, full circle moment that I was able to go through. And yeah. And I remember speaking about that at a lot of the public speaking events that we had to go to. And that's another thing that Inspire gives you, is they really encourage you to work on your public speaking. I know that Val saw like a huge increase, flourished in her public speaking as well. And she was actually able to go on CBC. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so after, when was this? Yeah, so we actually got visited by one of the students from Tuktoyaktuk. He came down for our final conference with Inspire, and so did one teacher from the school. And I think it was his last day here. No, it was not the last day here. It was the week that he was here. But the teacher has left, and I got a text at like 9 a.m. in the morning the day after our final conference with Inspire. The teacher, Michelle, she messaged me saying, a CBC news reporter will be contacting you about the project because, I don't know whether she sent him a video of the final conference or just mentioned the idea, or he just somehow found out. But he did text me like 10 minutes after that saying, okay, so, and this was at maybe 9:30 a.m. At 12:30, can we do a call and I'll interview you for CBC News North? And that was kind of unreal because, again, like when we started the project, it was going to be local and we weren't even sure if we'd get anything done just because of like lack of response. And so to have created something and then also have it be like recognized by CBC News, it was crazy. But yeah, we had a call with the guy, Des Laureen, I believe his name is, and it was me, John, who's also on the project, and Daryl, the student that came down, and also Daniela in the call, and Preet, also on the project. And it was very comfortable, like, giving the interview. It was really cool. And, yeah, I think the next day the article came out. That was cool. But I know that before Inspire, I wouldn't have even dreamed of that, for one, being on the news, two, like, being so comfortable speaking about it, but all of the different networking events have prepared us for it. Because the first one was, I think it was this women in STEM mixer that Remee, Shyla, and I all spoke at. And then we had our mid-year conference, and then just every 2 weeks we'd have our playback just showing what kind of work we've completed in 2 weeks. And so we got a lot of like public speaking practice in, and so at some point you just kind of stop caring that there's people watching you, and you want to share what you got to share. Yeah.
And honestly, it's a bit of a flex to be like a confident public speaker, is what I've found, like in job interviews, like saying that I can go up in front of anybody and like not be nervous, or be nervous but be able to get over it pretty quickly. I find that a flex, which is kind of cool.
True that. Even like at the most recent women's mixer, like I spoke at it, but like I had a name tag, and the people that were coming into the room, they were like looking up to me, and I was like, I'm just a student who can talk well. But it is a nice skill to have for sure. I didn't mention, but the team and I also went to the ACES conference in Vancouver, which is like a national Canada and US wide conference just on like Indigenous science and STEM and engineering projects. And we spoke at that and like after all of the training, and yeah, I think that was our like we made it moment. That was cool.
I love that. That's awesome.
I kind of, if that's okay, I want to trace back to what Remee said about tying it all together. So, you know, you learn all these concepts in school and you take all these classes like one by one or even together, but you don't really see how they tie into your profession until you get on a project like this or you start working. And so like for software engineering, you know, you take requirements engineering and you take like software testing and you take like all this super technical stuff and all these human courses, but you don't see them act together until you do a project like this. So like when we started it, first thing we needed to do is just like to organize ourselves, and that's something you learn in requirements engineering, for example, like how to be a project manager, how to prioritize what you do. All the design classes suddenly come into play, and all of these technical classes that you think are super important don't matter until the end, and that's actually the easiest part. So I definitely found like all these human side classes were super cool, but it was nice seeing them all like interweb, but also putting them into play. Yeah.
And cool. I think that like being on these projects is the first time that any of us really get to interact with seeing a project start and end in the same 4 months in the same co-op and having like full control over that project.
That is true.
Really cool.
Inspire is hiring students for their fall 2024 semester.
And if you want to learn more about leading a team, public speaking, starting and ending a project with minimal supervision and a lot of extra tools, and have some great networking experience, you should apply.
And don't forget the community engaged learning and doing something helpful.
The Centerstone of Inspire.
You can apply by heading to the Learning in Motion UVic co-op website or by going to the inspireuvic.org website directly.
Link in our show notes. Thank you so much, Val, for coming on our podcast today, and we wish you the very best with the next 4 months of your co-op.
And we can't wait to see how the project comes out.
Thanks for having me, guys, and yeah, I'll definitely keep you updated.
And from the Inspire team to you guys,
have a great day.
Bye guys.